if you look at the news reports of people doing, in the street interviews in New York or wherever, it seems like many Venezuelans are happy. Do you think is that a misperception? Do you think that's a correct perception? Which Venezuelans do you think are happy, which are not? And how do you make sense of that?
Well, I mean, I think obviously there's a kind of base of it's divided by class. Obviously, the same people who hated Chavez hated Maduro, and many of them live in the United States. But life got hard under Maduro. I mean, how many millions of Venezuelans fled the country under dangerous conditions and coming up the Darien Gap, to just because they couldn't survive in their own country. So, I mean, I think that I think that in some ways it transcended politics. I think there's probably a core base of support of organized groups that still exist that maybe 30-40%, that are still understand themselves as Chavistas, as revolutionaries. They understand the intervention in political terms, in historical terms, as a violation of sovereignty. And then there's a lot of people who just, thought, you know, thought thought Maduro was a dictator. Life got bad. Life was good under Chavez. Life got bad under Maduro. And they're probably happy that he has been deposed.
So to think about this in the terms of the history of U.S. foreign policy in Latin America, which you've written about so much, there's been a lot of talk about this as a return to some previous earlier era of gunboat diplomacy, whatever. What what do you think is new in what the Trump administration did? In literally going and abducting, kidnapping this guy. And what is new and different, and what is old? How do you put this into a framework of the kind of the way America has historically operated when it comes to Latin American regimes, particularly those that we don't like?
Yeah, everything old is new again. First, let me say, excuse me. First, let me say that um, the question of whether Maduro was good or bad or legitimate or illegitimate is one question. Another question is the question of sovereignty, national sovereignty, and who gets to decide it. And a good part of Latin America's history with the United States, going back well into the 19th century, is a demand on the part of Latin American statesmen that the United States do not intervene, that they recognize the absolute sovereignty of Latin American nations. FDR in 1933 finally conceded that point and recognized, and this really laid the foundation for what we think of as international law, that no nation has the
You don't know.
right to unilaterally decide that the sovereignty of another country isn't valid. And so acts like this, in which the United States unilaterally decide that Maduro has to go, regardless of support or regardless of, is really a turning point. It's really a violation of that ideal. The ideal of sovereignty is cherished. I mean, Latin America is a country, that has had Texas taken from them, but half of Mexico. Panama was shaved off of Colombia to build the canal between 1980 between 1898 and 1992, the United States carried out 42 successful coups, and those weren't even the ones that weren't successful. In 1898, the United States took Puerto Rico and seized Cuba. It occupied Haiti, Dominican Republic, and Nicaragua for extended periods of time. It bombed Veracruz. It invaded Mexico. I mean, there's a long, long history of U.S. intervention in Latin America. The thing that this operation most closely resembles is two things. One, I think most everybody knows or has heard of, is Manuel Noriega and in 1989, Operation Just Cause, where it was billed as a police action, and George H.W. Bush sent about 30,000 troops in to capture Noriega, and then he was brought back to the United States and he was tried. Noriega was a CIA asset in the 1980s. He was key in Iran-Contra. He was, an ally of George H.W. Bush, but he had served his purpose when, especially when it was found out that he was playing both sides. He was selling information to the Cubans. He was working with Mossad. He was working with the CIA. You know, it's Panama. Panama is like that crossroads. It's always that emporium section of the world in which, like, information is traded, and Noriega was key in that. And so the United States brought Noriega back, tried him, and found him guilty, and he died. I don't know if he was released or he died in the U.S. jail. I'm not trying to remember. But the other one, of course, is Jean-Bertrand Aristide in Haiti in 2005. Another coup that was organized, but not directly by the United States, but by democracy promotion groups that were associated with the United States, funded by things like AID and the National Endowment for Democracy. U.S. Marines went into Haiti, put a gun to Aristide's head. Aristide, of course, being a former liberation theologian priest who became president of Haiti twice, and flew him to the Congo. Gave him a minute to pack his bags and flew him to the Congo. So that's another example of the U.S. The other way that Haiti also kind of plays out is analogous to this, is that even before that, Aristide was the victim of a previous coup under George H.W. Bush, and he was restored by Bill Clinton to the presidency, but only on the condition that he accept a series of neoliberal economic reforms that are similar. Haiti doesn't have oil, it barely has rice, but Clinton insisted that Haiti open up its economy to Florida and Alabama rice and Arkansas rice, and devastated Haiti's peasant economy. So there's another example of this kind of using the threat of coercion in order to force economic reforms that benefit the United States. So yes, oil is important, and obviously part of the calculations of why the United States was concerned with Venezuela. But Haiti didn't have any oil.
So it's interesting. What I hear you saying, Greg, is that in some ways, as shocking to a lot of people as what Trump is doing, it's not necessarily fundamentally different than what the United States has done not 100 years ago, but just a few decades ago under presidents who, I mean, who are not considered widely to be as lawless, perhaps as. So is there anything in particular that, or should we really just understand this as basically the continuation of a very long history of the U.S. deposing leaders in Latin America? Didn't like a kind of an era that never really has ended. The U.S. has basically always just continued to do it, and what Trump has done is nothing particularly new here.
Well, this is the question, right? Because this is the question about Trump. How much of it is continuity and how much of it is innovation and something radically new? Behind most of his outrages stand a long history of policies made by bipartisan administrations before him. I mean, the drug war itself, in which which Trump at first used to try to isolate Maduro before going, directly going to oil, is 50 years old, and has been funded by every president, Democratic or Republican, ever since. And there's been, once, and there's plenty of outrages. They tend to be kept in the background, though, right? You don't really hear about, the DEA killing 400 peasants in 19 in 19 in 2019, or you don't hear much about Pinochet's involvement in the cocaine trade. I think what happens with what Trump does is he turns it into spectacle. He turn you know he's he, you know he he strips it of any he strips all of the pretense away. And this is, of course, is not just in Latin America. This is his historical role, right? To strip the pretense of liberal internationalism away and reveal pure politics and pure power politics.